Listen to the videos from Sarah Palin's church, and you will see how this woman is not qualified to be in the White House. She does not have the knowledge and experience to be in the White House. You can find the videos on YouTube, where Sarah Palin gives a speech to members of her longtime church, the Wasilla Assembly of God Church. The Assembly of God churches have been considered to be cults. They are not mainstream churches, and they have some far-out beliefs. Find out for yourself what they believe, and thereby what she believes. This is a very important fact that you need to consider when you are deciding what ticket to vote for in the upcoming election. You need to think about how someone with the beliefs from a cult will behave with the kind of power that they would have in the White House. You need to also consider how they have handled political power in the past. In the case of Sarah Palin, it seems to be clear that she has already abused the power that she has had. That is not the kind of person that you want in the White House. How much do you know about her? Both Obama and Biden have been in the public eye for years and years. You have a much better idea of how they will be in the White House. If you find that Sarah Palin is not being straightforward with the American people, then you are starting to wake up. With Sarah having been raised in this cult, she must have the same beliefs as the church. To become a member in a church, you need to believe what the church believes. It is clear from Sarah Palin's sudden change in stance on the news, where she is now trying to say that she does not know what God's will is, indicates that she is now lying about her beliefs for political gain. Sarah Palin is not the kind of person that you want to be in the White House. She says very clearly in her speech that it is God's will for America to go to Iraq and invade Iraq, and that it is God's will for there to be an oil pipeline in Alaska. This means that she believes that she knows what God's will is. Who does Sarah Palin think is God? Bush? With these kinds of beliefs, she would most certainly think that it is God's will to go and invade Iran. Why? Because they are not Christians, and she thinks that it is God's will for there to be a holy war in the Middle East, and if you vote for her and put her in the White House, then she will do what she thinks is God's will and invade Iran. Do you want to help her start another war and start World War III? Think about it. She is not going to be objective in her foreign policy. She has already been indoctrinated by the Assembly of God cult to think that she knows what God's will is. That is very clear from her speech in her home state of Alaska. Wake up and see what she is really about. Do you think that someone who thinks that Muslims are going to hell will think twice about using nuclear weapons to blow up Muslims because they do not believe in Jesus? Don't you think that someone who thinks that Muslims are going to hell anyway will justify killing them and feel no remorse? She thinks that it is God's will for America to be at war with Iraq, and to have hundreds of thousands of Iraqis killed. Think about it and wake up. Do you want someone in the White House who thinks that it is God's will to drop bombs on Iraq? Do you want someone in the White House who thinks that it is God's will to lie to the American people and fight an illegal war? Do you want someone in the White House who thinks that it is God's will to destroy the American economy by spending billions of dollars on an unnecessary war, and to spend hundreds of billions more on a war with Iran, all because it is God's will? Have you ever asked her why she thinks it is God's will to go to war? Listen to her responses to see just how far out she is. Don't let the Republicans fool you into thinking that she has changed. She grew up in the Assembly of God Church, and her religious beliefs are ingrained. She has devoted her life to God's will, and that means going to war with Iraq and making oil pipelines around the world to help the oil companies to get richer than they already are. Who do you think is funding her political career? She tries to make a deal with the Master's Commission graduates of the church, that they will get people to believe that it is God's will to have an Alaskan oil pipeline. The creation of this oil pipeline has been something that Republicans have been fighting to do for some time. Who do you think has been funding Sarah Palin's political career? Wake up and put it all together. It is clear that Sarah Palin is lying on the news. She thinks that she knows what God's will is. She thinks that it is God's will to make an oil pipeline in Alaska. She thinks that all of the killing and death in Iraq is God's will. Do you want this kind of person in the White House? Can you imagine how cruel someone would have to be to think that it is God's will to kill all of the thousands of American servicemen and women and to kill all of the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi men and women and children? Is that God's will? Do you want someone in the White House who will be able to make decisions to fire nuclear weapons, who thinks that it is God's will to kill men, women, and children in Iraq? What about in Iran? Do you want someone to be in the White House who thinks that those things that she wants is God's will? She thinks that God is telling what is going on and what is going to go on. She thinks that God is telling her what God's will is. The Republicans will try to get her to change her story so that you do not see how far out her beliefs really are. It is so clear that the McCain campaign did not take the time to find out what her beliefs are. They spent 3 hours with her in a meeting to choose her as a running mate. That is just absurd. Someone who can start World War III because they think that it is God's will. Someone who thinks that the war in Iraq is a messianic event, a historic time for God's will. Wake up and rock the vote.